In this video we're going to make a hotkey bar to select our active weapon. Each weapon is unique and the player can activate them by clicking on the hotkey bar or using the keyboard. The bar is customizable, so each weapon or item can be dragged into a different position. Let's begin! Hello and welcome, I'm your Code Monkey, and this channel is all about helping you learn how to make your own games with in-depth tutorials made by a professional indie game developer. So if you find the video helpful, consider subscribing. Okay, so this is what we want to make. Over here is my player character. I can move him around and look around. As you can see, I'm currently holding a pistol and I can click in order to shoot, and there you go, I'm shooting my pistol. Now here on the UI, there's this nice hotkey bar with numbered keys. So for example, I can press 3. And there you go, I've equipped the sword. I can press 4 to equip a shotgun, press 5 to equip my punches, and press 1 to consume a health potion. So using the keyboard, I can very easily swap between weapons or use an item. The code behind it is very versatile, so I can easily drag each element into a different position on the bar. So for example, let's swap the sword and the pistol. So now when I press 2, I have the sword. When I press 3, I have the pistol. Then another example, out here I have a mana potion on a extra bar. So right now it's not on the bar, so I cannot use it, but I can drag it into a valid position. So let's put it on 4, and if I press 4, there you go, now I can activate my mana potion. So with this we have a very nice bar with active abilities or items that we can select and customize their action behavior. All of this code is nicely abstracted, so all you need to apply this to your own weapons or items is to have a simple function call. Alright, so this is our goal. Let's get to it. So here we are in the starting scene. I have this character in here and I can move him around, and with the mouse I can shoot with my current weapon, which is a pistol. Now over here I have my player class with functions to change the current weapon type, as well as some functions to consume a health and a mana potion. So we want to call these functions through a nice hotbar in the UI and through our keyboard. Alright, so first let's make a testing script to test this out. So we make a new C# script. Let's call this testing. Make a new game object, call it testing, and drag the script onto it. Okay. Alright, so now in here, let's simply do a private void update. And on the update, let's test for keyboard input. Here we can use the alpha numbers. These are the numbers right above the keyboard. So when we press the number 1, let's enable the pistol. So for that we need a reference to our player instance. Okay, here is my field. Let's go into the editor. There's the field and just drag the game object. Okay. So now with this reference we can use the functions that we saw. So in this case we set the weapon type. When we press the number 1, let's enable the pistol. Then let's add all the others. Okay, so here we have, when I press 1, we're going to enable the pistol, on 2 the shotgun, on 3 the sword, on 4 the punch, and on 5 we're going to consume a health potion. Okay, so let's test this out. So here we are with our pistol. Okay, now press 2, and there you go, now we have a nice shotgun. Okay, now press 3, and now we have a nice sword. Press 4, and now we have a simple punch and kick, and press 5, and we have a nice consume health potion. Alright, great. So we have our keyboard inputs correctly calling functions in our player to change the active weapon. Awesome. Now let's make sure that we write some nice clean code. So over here in our testing we have our hotkey code. Let's put this in a dedicated class instead. So we make a new C# script. Let's call this the hotkey ability system. Now in here let's make this a simple class, so no mono behavior. Now let's copy the input code from our testing, so we copy the entire update. Let's make a constructor to receive our player. Okay, just like that. Now on testing, all we have to do is create it and call this function. So in here, let's make a private void start, and on start, let's create a hotkey ability system. So on start, we instantiate a new instance of our class, we pass in the player, and on update, we're simply calling our update, which then is doing the same as previously. Okay, so everything should still be working exactly the same as before. Let's test. Okay, here we are with a pistol and a shotgun, and now they sword and punch and consume the health potion. Okay, great. So far, so good. Now, right now, in here we have our abilities hard-coded. So when we press 1, we activate the pistol onto the shotgun and so on. So the next step is to swap out these function calls for a nice object. So first, let's create an enum for each ability type. Okay, we have an enum with all of our various abilities. Now let's make a class to hold both the ability type and the action to activate that ability. So go down here, we make a nested class, so a public class. Let's call this the hotkey ability. And inside we're going to have a ability type. And we're also going to have a action, which is inside the using system namespace. So an action, and let's call this the activate ability action. Alright, so here we have a nice class that holds an enum, which is the type of the ability, and an action that we use to activate our ability. Now an action, in case you're not familiar, is essentially a function that we can store inside a field. So using this, we can now go all the way up here, and we're going to make a private list of hotkey ability. So we make the list, and now in here we can add our abilities. So let's add, and we construct a new hotkey ability. We're going to pass in the ability type for this one for the pistol, and then for the activate ability action, we pass in what we were doing in here. Okay, so just like this, you can see the pattern that we're going to go with. So we added to the list an ability of type pistol, and when we activate this action, we're going to set the weapon type to pistol. Now just add the other ones. Alright, so here we have filled up our list with all of our possible abilities. And now using this, we can make our code nice and versatile. So down here, instead of triggering the function directly on the player, we're going to access our hotkey ability list. Then we're going to access it on a specific index. So when we press 1, let's access on index 0, and we call the activate ability action. Then we do the same for all the others. So just like this, our abilities are no longer hard-coded directly into our key inputs. So for example, let's put the health potion on the first ability. So let's see if everything changes. Okay, so here we are, everything is normal. Now when I press 1, there you go, I consumed a health potion instead of equipping the pistol. So you can see how by using a custom object, we can now easily swap out what we do on each key. Okay, so now that we have the underlying system working, let's make our UI elements. So here in our scene, I have the game handler inside the UI component and a canvas. Here, let's make a new game object, call this the UI Hotkey Bar. Now inside, let's make a ability slot template. Alright, so here is the template. It's very simple. We just have a background, then a nice border on top, a number for the hotkey, and then a item image. Now this is the game object that we're going to duplicate in order to dynamically populate our bar. Alright, so let's make our script. So we create a new C# script, call it the UI Hotkey Bar. Drag it into our game object, okay. Now in here, the first thing we need is to grab our template reference. Okay, we have our template and we set it off as hidden. So just like this, we have this script for the UI, and then we have our ability system for the logic. Now we need to connect them both. So on the UI, let's make a function to receive our ability system. Okay, we'll receive it. Now we need to update our visual. And now in here, we need to cycle through all of the abilities that we have in our hotkey system. So back in the system, let's make a function to return our list. So all we do is return the list, all right. And now in here, we can cycle through it. Now, as we cycle through it, let's duplicate our template. Now we need to locate it correctly. So you place it correctly, okay. Now we need to set our correct image. So in order to get the image, let's go inside our hotkey ability. And here let's make a function to return our sprite. We're going to do a switch on our ability type. And now in here we need a reference for the sprite. So for that, let's use our testing class in order to hold our references. Okay, so here I've set up a very simple singleton pattern. So we have a static instance and we set it on awake. Then we have our public fields that we're going to set and access. Now here I'm just doing it on the testing in order to quickly get this done. But if you're using this in a proper game, then you would obviously put all of this code in a proper game assets class. So, but in this case, this works. Let's go into the editor. So here on our testing game object, we have all of our fields. So let's simply drag all the references onto it. Okay, we have our fields back in the code. Now we have all of these fields set and we can access them through our static instance. So we go back into our hotkey ability. Now in here, when we get the sprite, in case we want a pistol, then we simply do a return, go into the testing, access the static instance, and we get the pistol sprite. All right, so that's it. Now all the same for all the others. Okay, now we have our function to get the sprite, so we can go back in the UI. And in here, let's update the sprite. All right, so here it is, all correct. So we have our UI class. It contains our ability slot template. And actually in here, since we start off with the template disabled, then we have to re-enable it once we instantiate it. So we take this one, we go into the game object, set active to true. Okay, so here on our update visual, we cycle through all of our hotkey abilities. Then we duplicate our template. We set it to visible. We correctly locate it based on the index. And then we update our item image based on the get sprite from that hotkey ability. Okay, so the last thing we need is just to call this function in here. So we're going to do that on our testing class. All we need is to add another serialized field, in this case for our UI hotkey bar. So back in the editor, we just drag the reference. So there's the testing, there's the reference, and drag it on there. Okay. And now finally in here, we create our hotkey ability system, and then we set it on our UI. So there it is, very simple. All right, so just like this, we should be able to see our visual bar correctly displaying all of our hotkeys. Let's test. And yep, there it is. There's our hotkey bar correctly displaying all of our hotkeys. All we need is to fix the number, so very quickly. Okay, here we are, and yep, there you go. They all say 1 through 5, and they all correctly display it. So if I press 1, I should, yep, there you go. There's the health potion, onto we got the pistol, the shotgun, the sword, and the punch. All right, awesome. Now to make sure that this is working correctly, let's try swapping one of them out. So to do that, it's very simple. We don't need to deal with the UI at all. We just need to go into our ability system, and in here, let's swap the sword for the shotgun. Let's test. And yep, there it is, our UI correctly updated and changed position. The sword is now on 3 and the shotgun on 4. So if I press 3, there you go, I now have the sword. And if I press 4, now I got the shotgun. All right, awesome. Okay, so now let's enable clicking on the UI in order to change our active ability. So for that, let's go here in the editor onto our template. And let's create a script to handle our mouse input. So a new C# script, call this the UI hotkey bar ability slot. And let's make sure we drag it on there, okay. Now in here, we're going to implement some UI events. So for that, we need to be using Unity engine.event systems. And with that, we can now implement various interfaces. So in this case, let's implement iPointerDown handler. Okay, here we have our event that gets called whenever we press on this object. So when we do, we want to activate this ability. So for that, let's make a function for this object to receive the ability assigned to it. Okay, so just like this, we have our hotkey ability assigned. We're going to assign it on our UI. Here, when we create our visual, let's call this function, which is inside in here. So we get the component of type our ability slot. Okay, just like that, we are passing in our ability. And now in here, all we have to do is activate it. So we can simply go into our ability and activate the ability action. All right, so that's it. Very simple. Let's test. Okay, here we are with the pistol, and yep, click to shoot. Works fine. Now let's select the shotgun. So click, and there you go. Now I'm activating the shotgun, and now load up on some health potions, and now back into the pistol, back into the sword, and the punch, and so on. All right, awesome. So we can now click and also use the keyboard in order to manipulate our hotkey bar. Okay, now let's deal with dragging and dropping in order to change the position of our abilities. So for that, we go here into our ability slot script, and we can implement a bunch of more interfaces. So let's implement the iDrag handler, and let's also implement the iDrop handler. Okay, we have our two new functions. Now I've done 2 videos on how to drag and drop various things using our UI events. So if you'd like to know more, go check out those videos. One of them is on dragging a UI window and sending it to the top, and another one is on dragging and dropping. In here, I'm going to just quickly implement both of these. Okay, so I have added the drag code. Okay, so here on drag, I am moving the rect transform by the event data delta movement. Now, as you saw in those 2 videos, we need to divide it by the canvas scale factor. And in order to get our canvas, we have the code up here in order to automatically grab it. Essentially, we just go through every parent until we find a canvas. So just like this, we should be able to drag our ability slots. Let's test. Okay, there they are, and let's click and drag, and there you go. I can now drag the slot alongside me. All right, awesome. So this is working. I can move it around. However, when I let go, it should either be valid only when I drop it on top of another one, or if not, then it should snap back into the original position. So let's first deal with the snap. In order to snap back, all we need to know is our starting position. So in here we store a vector2. So on start, we grab our start anchored position. And here we can reset our position on another drag event. So in here, let's add the end drag handler. So this one is triggered whenever we stop dragging. So it's in here that we can go to drag transform and set the anchored position to our start anchored position. Okay, let's test. Okay, here we are. There's the pistol icon. Click and drag, and I'll let go. And there you go. It goes back into the position. All right, awesome. So now that it automatically snaps back, let's deal with dropping on top of another one. So for that, we're going to implement our onDrop event. And now in here, we're going to do just like we did on the drag drop video. So here we test if we were dragging something, and if so, then we test if that something contains an ability slot. And if so, then it's in here that we want to essentially swap. So in order to swap, let's go into our ability system. And in here, we want to make a function that swaps 2 indexes. So let's go all the way down here. And in here, we make a public void swap ability and receive an int for the ability index. So we receive 2 indexes, and in here, all we need to do is swap them. All right, so there it is, very simple. So we can now call this function. So let's go into our slot. So here, first we need our system reference. So let's rename this function since we're going to receive multiple things. So let's simply rename this to setup. And then we're going to receive a system, receive an index and our hotkey ability. Let's store all of these. Alright, so with our setup, we now have a reference to the hotkey system, and then we can simply go in here, and we call swap our abilities. We want to swap this one, so we pass in this ability index, and then we want the target ability index. So for that, we need to make a function to return this. So we make a public return int for the get ability index, and we simply return it. So we go into the target hotkey ability slot and get that index. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the swap logic. However, we still need to take care of a few things. So first of all, here the setup, let's call this one. So on the hotkey bar, here we are with our setup. So we pass in the setup, then we have to pass in our ability system, then pass in this index. So it's the I and the ability, okay. And now in here, let's do a debug.log on both indexes, just to see which ones are being swapped. Let's test. Okay, here we are. Now let's drag and drop, and there you go, it resets. Okay, now let's drag and drop on top of this one and drop it, and there you go, it doesn't quite work. If we look at the console, there you go, we are swapping the 3 with the 3. This is the same issue that we dealt with on the drag and drop video. The issue is that this one is capturing both events, so when I drop, it's not dropping on top of that one, but rather dropping on top of itself. So let's fix that. So to fix, we just go into our template and we add a canvas group. So then in here, we just grab it. Then let's disable the raycast with the I begin drag handler. So let's implement this one. Okay, so when we begin dragging, we're going to lower the alpha and stop blocking the raycast. And when we finish, we reset everything. So now we should be correctly listening to this event on the correct object. Okay, here we are. Let's grab the shotgun and drop it on top of the sword. And there you go, it corrected. And over here in the console, you can see swap 2 with 3. And as we start dragging, there you go, it becomes transparent. We do have one more issue here though, which is this one is correctly on top of that one. Okay, however, this one, the pistol, if we drag it, there you go, the pistol is behind the sword. We would like the draggable one to be on top, so let's fix that. So that's very simple. Over here on the begin drag, we simply need to go into the transform.setAsLastSibling. Since the order for which UI objects are on top of another one is dependent on their child index. So let's see. Okay, here we are. Let's drag the pistol, and there you go, it shows up on top. So drag that one, and yep, on top, and on top of all of them. All right, great. Now here we've actually already implemented our swap, except we can't really see it since everything still looks the same. But let's say I swap the 5 with the 4. So visually, the 5 still says the punch, but if I click on 5, there you go, I am now equipping the shotgun. So the logic is working, but the visual is not updating. Let's deal with that. So essentially, the UI needs to update whenever we swap the ability. So here on the swap ability, let's use some events. So we create a new event handler. Let's call it on ability list changed. And whenever we modify our list, let's trigger this event. So right in here, we call invoke. All right, so there it is, very simple. This event is fired whenever we swap an ability. So you can now go into our UI script. And in here, we already have the update visual function, except it's only being called once. So now when we receive this, we go into the system and subscribe to the event. Whenever the event fires, we call our function. So there it is, very simple. Let's test. Okay, so here we are with the pistol on 2 and the sword on 3, and let's drag it and swap it. And there you go, it did in fact swap, although we have to deal with another issue, which is deleting the old objects. So let's do that. So in here, whenever we update, we just need to delete all of the children, except for the template. Okay, so here it is, very simple. We cycle through all the children, we ignore the template, and we destroy all the others. Let's see. And here we are, and let's drag the pistol on top of the sword, and there you go, they correctly changed. Now the pistol is on 3 and the sword is on 2. So if I press 2, there you go, I'm now holding the sword, press 3, and now I'm holding the pistol. So I can swap all of them, and they all work correctly. So just like that, yep, there you go, very nice. All right, awesome. So now that we have all this working, let's add a simple place for some extra abilities. So for that, let's go into our system, and in here, let's make another list. This will be the extra hotkey ability list. So this list will contain extra abilities that are not currently present on the bar. So we cannot activate them, we need to drag them onto the bar in order to use them. So let's add a mana potion. So in here we just add a new type for a mana potion. Then we just created pretty much like all the others, except we added to the extra hotkey ability list. Okay, there it is. As you can see, the object is exactly the same, except it's on a different list. Now let's deal with the UI. Here we're going to do very much the same thing, except put it on the side. So here I set it up very simply just for testing, so I'm just shifting it onto the side and going through the secondary list just like this. Obviously, if you were using this in your own game, you would clean this up since you don't want to have duplicate code. Now in here we have two options. For example, we can make the setup and pass in -1 to indicate a extra ability. So we would pass in -1 into the ability index, and then here we'd swap that ability. And in our system, we would verify which one of these is extra and which one is not. So that's one approach, but another approach is, in here we already know our abilities, so we can simply modify this function to work with hotkey abilities instead of indexes. So let's try that approach just to see things differently. Okay, so here I modify the code in order to swap an ability by receiving ability objects instead of indexes. So now with this one, we can more easily verify which one is on the extra list. Okay, so here it is. We receive both of our abilities. Then we check if hotkey A is on the extra ability list. If so, then we grab the index for the B on the current list. We swap it out with the A. Then we remove the A from the extra and we put the B on the extra. If A is not on the extra list, then we test for the B. If so, then we do the exact same thing. If neither of them, then we do what we were doing previously. Okay, so let's test. Okay, so here we are with the pistol. All right, so far so good. And here on the extra list, I have the mana potion. So let's drag it and let's swap it out with the shotgun. And there you go, it swapped out correctly in position. Now if I press 4, there you go, now I'm using the mana potion. So I can then drag them on the inside, and there you go, everything, all the buttons, all the things work perfectly fine. So just like this, I have an extra ability slot in here, and I can drag them onto my hotkeys. So just remove the number since that one is not activatable through a key. And there it is, just like that, everything is perfect. So press 1 for the health potion, press 2 for the pistol, 3 for the sword, 4 for the shotgun, 5 for the punch. And now pressing any other buttons doesn't work for the mana potion, but I can drag the mana potion and swap it out with the sword. And I press 3, and there you go, mana potion, 2 on that, and so on. Swap it out, now on 3 I got the shotgun, and on 4 I got the mana potion. So I can click on any ability in order to activate them. I can drag them to swap their position, and I can use the keyboard in order to select my current active weapon. Alright, awesome. So this is a great system to add to any game where you have multiple weapons or skills or items. The extra bar, for example, could be the inventory, where you would drag objects from the inventory onto the bar in order to use them. So that's one possible use case scenario. As always, you can download the project files and utilities from unitycodemonkey.com. Subscribe to the channel for more Unity tutorials, post any questions you have in the comments, and I'll see you next time.